All right, and without further ado, Sam Nasser, all about
Excellent.
Foundry AI agents.
Thank you, Lee. Glad to be back. It's always a pleasure presenting to this group, and wanted to go ahead and just jump right in. Uh, Once again, my name is Sam Nasser, and as Lee mentioned, I am going to be presenting on all about AI agents and just some overhead things to mention. You can find me on Twitter or X at Sam Nasser. I've been a software developer since 1995, and I'm a senior software engineer and trainer for NIS Technologies. I've been certified with several certifications from Microsoft, and as Lee mentioned, I run the Cleveland C# user group, as well as the Azure Cleveland user group. In addition, I've also authored several technical articles as well as videos on LinkedIn and Visual Studio Magazine. And I need to update this slide. I am an 8-time Microsoft MVP. Little shameless plug, if I may, the Cleveland User Group meets every month. The meetings are free of charge and open to the public, much like the caparea.net user group. And you can find the meeting information posted at meetup.com for both Azure Cleveland as well as Cleveland C#. I'm sorry, did I hear a question?
No, so I'm going to go ahead and go on mute now, unless there is one.
Okay, very good. So let's dive into today's presentation. And for starters, what is an agent? So before we get into that, let me just give you a brief description. We've all dealt with mechanics or auto technicians in the past, correct? Sometimes you've come across an auto tech where you ask them a question, how often do I need to change my transmission fluid? How often do I need to change my motor oil? And they can answer questions for you right off the bat, right? Now, if you have someone who's sitting next to you, let's say at a bus or in a baseball game, and you ask them this question, they can reply to you, but they certainly can't do that oil change or transmission flush unless they have the tools. And that is the differentiation between an LLM, a large language model, and an agent. So an LLM is really nothing more than the brains. I can ask it questions, get answers back, but I really can't have it do anything unless I enable it and give it a tool. And once I give it a tool, it is now considered an agent. So given that background information, an agent is basically a large language model that is associated with a set of tools, and I give it instructions on how to utilize those tools. More specifically, you can think of it like a microservice. So it will do one single task, or should do one single task. You should build the agents so that they are very focused on the task that they are given, as opposed to doing multiple things. So for example, I would want to be able to retrieve stock prices. That would be done through one agent. I want to be able to email out these stock prices that I found today. That would be another agent. And then I can chain them or utilize workflow to be able to get the stock price and then send those stock prices in an email. So those would be two separate agents that would work together in a daisy chain format. Pardon me. So I want to treat them like a microservice. Expanding on that, essentially what I have is, once I build my agent, I'm going to have a set of instructions that are going to be fed into it, as we see input on the left-hand side, which is composed of several things. So first, it's the system events, as well as the user messages. The user messages, in many cases, what's used to trigger the agent. Or it could be a message from another agent that's being sent to it. For example, like I said, if I'm going to be creating a daisy chain of getting stock prices and then emailing them, the email agent would essentially wait for information from the stock price agent. And so there I would be feeding it into the email agent, and then the output of that would be the email essentially that's being sent. And so as you see on the bottom part of the slide, we're actually able to use tools and actions in addition to memory, meaning that I can actually utilize context within a conversation so that can be utilized within my agents. Then I can use these instructions that I'm given. If I was the agent, that is, I would use these instructions that were given to me that are either built in or retrieved from a user message and then I can execute the tools that I'm attached to, and then be able to produce an output. So, just a quick survey. Does that make sense to everybody? Either a thumbs up or let Lee know that we're on the right track.
Yeah, we've got about 12 thumbs up in the
Excellent.
room here.
All right. Scott has a question, or did you meant to give a thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
All right. Excellent. Very good. So, onwards and upwards. So going back into our slide deck, so how do we build an agent? There are multiple ways of doing it. The best way and the easiest way is using the Azure AI Foundry. Another method is utilizing the Microsoft Agent Framework, which is currently in preview, and it will be rolling in the semantic framework and the AutoGen frameworks. So the agent framework is now going to be the new framework that we're going to use for creating greenfield agents. Another thing is I could create my own custom GitHub Copilot agent. So just like I have a Copilot sitting in my Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, I have it in agent mode. I can also create a custom agent to be able to live within that. That will require either the Copilot Pro, Pro Plus, or higher level licenses. Another method for building an agent is using the computer use agents. And these are agents that essentially can be used on the computer, meaning my own machine, and I can have it go to a website, be able to download a document, and then take that document and then be able to fill in fields in a specific form. So essentially, it is mimicking my behavior on my behalf. Last is we can also create an agent within Microsoft Fabric where it can do analysis on specific data and then be able to trigger on specific events depending on the data that is provided. So I always say the best way to explain something is to demonstrate it. So let's jump into the Azure AI Foundry. And before we get
Tim,
into
could you zoom
Foundry,
in just one level here for the folks in the back of the room? Can you guys see that okay?
how's that?
Okay, maybe just, yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right, very good. Somehow I have my credits remaining showing up. Not that I mean to brag, but it showed up by accident. But in any case, you'll see that I have a resource group, RG Sam Nasser 1001. And then you see that I have multiple things related to the Azure AI Foundry and a Foundry project and a Logic app. And all this is within the Azure portal. We haven't gotten to the Foundry yet. What I'm trying to emphasize here is that everything that I do in the Foundry essentially gets put back into Azure. So Azure is the main subscription that I have, and then I can connect to it using Foundry, and anything I build in Foundry essentially will be stored in my Azure portal. One way to look at it is imagine if you had a very large bank that had a lot of offerings, checking, savings, credit cards, stock trading accounts. I can open up any of these accounts, but essentially I need to start with identifying myself and having a subscription, quote unquote, in that bank. Then I can have several accounts. I can go and buy stocks and be able to trade stocks through that account. But essentially, everything is tied back to my identity at that bank. It's the same thing with the Azure portal and the AI Foundry. Everything I do in the AI Foundry is a service that's essentially tied back into the Azure portal that's connected with my subscription. And of course, once I have a subscription, that's where all the billing takes place. Want to pause here and read a comment that's in the chat. I mean, online, if you have any questions, just post them here. Yes, please post any questions in chat. Also, feel free to jump in verbally if you're able to, but we'll definitely going to be taking questions as we go. And I should also emphasize, there is no such thing as a silly question. I'm willing to handle all questions. If something needs a little more detail, then I'll just politely let you know that we can take this offline or chat afterwards. So continuing on, I got my Azure subscription all set up. The next thing is to be able to build and deploy a model. So as I had mentioned earlier, the model is the brains for the agent. So naturally I would need to deploy a model first. Since I already have a model deployed, what I'm going to do is take you through a fast track of what was needed to create that model. So this is a screen caption, like I said, because the model is already created. We are talking about the creating a model, and in order to do that, it has to be tied in with a hub and a project. So in the past, in the AI Foundry, you had to create the hub first, then you had to create a project, and then you could create resources under that project. Things that are a little bit more expedited now, where I can select to utilize an Azure AI Foundry resource, and that will create the hub and the project for me dynamically. And question in chat, when you mentioned computer use, you weren't necessarily talking about Anthropic's tool, right? I was not talking about that. I was talking about CUA, which is developed by Microsoft, and we'll see a little video clip about that later. It's still in preview, and it allows you to be able to utilize your own computer as if you were sitting at your own desktop, and then it can mimic your own actions. Does that answer your question, Tim? Excellent, very good. All right, so I start in the Foundry, and when I selected to deploy a new model, I'm given these two options. So I selected the Foundry resource. I then specify all the various parameters for my project, primarily the subscription that it's going to be going against, the resource group, and of course the region. From there, I create it, and then I'm able to deploy a model simply by going into the model playground, or in this case, the agents playground, and selecting to deploy a model. And in this case, I selected GPT-4.1 Mini. From there, I specify the deployment type, and we'll talk more about that later, as well as all the other parameters that go along with it. Now, for every model, there are multiple versions that are available. And for this case, I just selected the default version of April 14th. And then from there, I then have my model available, and then I can go through and then create my agent. So for creating an agent, and we can jump into the portal at this stage. So I would start by going into, I can go into agents. Pardon me. Question, Lee?
No, sorry, no questions yet. I don't think. Any
Okay.
questions?
All right, so from there, I can go into agents and then select new agents. And immediately it pops up a pane over on the right-hand side, and it gives me an asset ID. But then it also gives me an agent name where I can populate it here, and I can call this agent demo. Let's do 1104 for today's date. I'll select from the models that I have deployed, and in this case, I only have one model deployed within this project. And then you'll see that I have things like actions. So actions is another word for tools. And like I said earlier, basically an agent is nothing more than a large language model that is connected to a tool or an action. So what are some of the actions that I can implement? Here we have several functionalities that are available where I can select a code interpreter, an Open API 3.0 tool, or Agic Logic apps. And if we click on the Logic apps, we see that we have 3 tabs for all that are available, the ones that I had created versus the ones that are Microsoft authored. And I see things like get forecast from MSN Weather, execute a SQL query, or call an external HTTP call. So we'll go ahead and do an external HTTP call. And here it's just an agent description. Oh, well, first let's start with the action name. So we'll call this get, let's say, company list. We'll give it a description of what the action does. Retrieves a list of companies. from a specific URI. I'm attaching it to my subscription in the same resource group and in that location, East US 2. We'll move on to next. And the action that I want to do here is get for my HTTP method. And then we'll proceed. And of course, there's a message about the pricing. And once I accept that, I have a note on the bottom that a logic app will be created. You will not be able to return to previous steps. Once I'm satisfied with everything, I can move forward. It produces the schema, and as well as it's prompting me for how do you want to invoke the tool. And I'll just give it a brief description, call the HTTP endpoint when triggered. Create. And now we see that we have the list that popped up. Now, I can run it in the playground, but it really didn't give it a specific URI. So I can go into my sample API that I have for testing, thanks to bScepter. Forgive me, my voice is acting up. I apologize. But essentially, bScepter has several URIs where I can retrieve information. So this is a list of companies, random companies. And toolbar got in place. To give you an idea of what that's going to produce, we'll run it here and we see that it's a JSON result set of some random companies with addresses and so forth that are presented. So now I can go over into my Foundry. And I will say, retrieve a list of companies from URI when requested. And I will try this in the playground. Now, playground is basically a sandbox, and there are many different playgrounds that are available within the AI Foundry where I can set up, configure, test, and eventually deploy my model or my agent rather. So now here I gave it the instructions and somehow the instructions didn't get saved. Not sure what happened here, but retrieve a list of companies from unrequested. And then you'll notice that basically once I lose focus from there, it automatically saves it. And there's the message on the bottom saying it was last saved at 7:14 p.m. So now I can run it in the playground by entering in a text command, and I'll say get list of companies. We'll give it a minute as it's generating, making the call, and here it's producing the list of the companies that were found. Now I can further refine that, just like I can with my model using RAG, where now I can say display only company name and CEO. And I see there's a misspelling, but I will leave it there intentionally on one line. By the way, I have to tell you, I hate having a touchpad on my laptop because I keep jumping all over the place accidentally, especially as I keep turning, looking at my other screen. In any case, so afterwards, display all the JSON in pretty format. And again, once I tap away, it is saved. And now I can just simply say run. And there it's executing everything as I had asked it to. All right, so we have a question from Frank. Did you need to put the instructions on the agent and also the action? So that depends. If you want the action to always execute for a specific URI, you can put it there. When I put it in the agent instruction, it passes that on to the action, and then it's able to retrieve it from there. Think of it as if, you know, as a manager, if you tell your subordinate employee to, if you give them specific instructions each time, then they can take that set of instructions. If you need to tell them, for example, go to a specific location, then they'll wait for you to give them that location. Otherwise, if they know for a fact that that they are to go to that location each and every time, then they're automatically programmed to do that, so to speak. It's the same thing with the action. It can go there directly if I program that action, or I can just pass it over from the agent itself.
I've got
I
lots of
Does that make
questions.
sense? Yes, go ahead.
So if you put in instructions that say, you know, you know, always display the JSON in pretty format, the but then in the text area, you give it contradictory instructions. Who wins? Is it going to be the instructions that win or the chat that wins?
Okay, good
Because
question.
the chat presumably is for your customer or someone that's not you, and the instructions was input by you, right?
Correct. So basically, like I said, everything boils down to the model because whatever I'm typing here essentially goes to the model, right? So when I deploy that model, I can also deploy content safety along with it, one of them being jailbreaking, meaning to never go against the instructions that I gave it. You with me?
Hmm?
So once I have it set for jailbreak, then it will not go against the instructions that I gave it. If I left that blank, then whatever the user enters here is what it will execute. Now, keep in mind, this is a playground. This is not what I'm exposing to my end user. So typically, when I go to deploy it, I will utilize code like this, for example. Let's go to C#. So when I clicked on the agent code, it produced this code snippet where I can essentially make an API call into this location and be able to call my agent and be able to get the results. So in a production environment, I would have some type of an interface that would collect the user input, and then I can filter that input, number one, for the number of words, where I can have it, let's say, allow them only 100 words maximum, so that way it doesn't exceed my token limits or increase my token usage, I should say. But then because that text is limited, then I can also prevent any additional comments that might go against the instruction set. But the more foolproof method is having it where in the content safety and have the jailbreak method checked. Does that answer your question, Lee?
Yeah, that makes sense. Also, can you zoom in? That code's really interesting.
Absolutely. So this is a code snippet that was available through the AI Foundry. And again, it's available in different formats. And all I'm doing is essentially I will be making a URI call here to this endpoint and then be able to retrieve the results. So here is where the user message would be entered. Again, this is just stub code where basically I would fill in the fields that I need to populate. But this is where my code would be executed that I collect from the user and then be sent over to the model. Make sense?
It might be a simple question. What is the cost of it? Like how much does it cost to run an agent? Is it every time an end user runs it, or is it once when you're creating this model, or?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about costs, Sam, or is that coming up later?
Guys, it's only money. What's the big deal? I'm kidding. Okay, so yes, absolutely. So basically, the cost is dependent on several things. The model, the hosting, and then the token usage. Now, as far as model, we need to look at what type of model I'm using. For my purposes, I just utilize GPT-4o Mini, right? But let's say that I'm using a refined model or I distilled a model. That is where cost gets really expensive, even just for hosting the model, not even the usage. That's a separate category altogether. So the hosting the model, and then the actual token usage for me, input and output. So when I said you want to have an interface where you're collecting user input and then sending it over to the model using this type of code, the reason for that is you want to limit the input so that way they don't ramble on sentences and sentences for a request. Because as you'll notice, with every request that I submitted, and I think my screen is a little too big here. Here is my token usage and the latency. Every time I execute that, the input, there's a token cost. The reply also has a token cost. So I hate to use the infamous developer answer, but it depends. But in order to limit your cost, you want to look at the type of model you're deploying, the type of deployment, as well as your token usage for both in and out tokens.
Catalog show you the costs?
I'm sorry, Frank, I can barely hear you.
Does the model catalog show you the costs?
Does the model catalog show you the costs? Let's take a look at that. So this is in the
Does
AI
everyone know what a
Foundry.
token is?
A token is a portion of a word or a full word in itself. Let me answer Frank's question first, and then we'll get back into the tokens. So as far as the models, so here it gives you a rough idea. What I'm doing here is I'm comparing 4 models, and I'm able to look at how much they would be. As it says, cost is per 1 million tokens on the x-axis. So the cost for this, that's only a ranking. So 0.87, and the ranking is 12 out of 65 regarding, no, that's, sorry, I was looking at the quality index. So for the cost score is 1.93 for the O3 Mini, and that ranks 23 out of the 58 models for that. In addition, Kevin also posted a calculator for the token inputs and outputs. And again, this is estimated. So this is the type of information that you get regarding the models. In addition, you can go into specific details for each model. So here we have estimated cost 193 per 1 million tokens for the O3 Mini, and some additional markers for quality, latency, and throughput. And again, this is for the 4 models that I had selected that I wanted to compare. Okay. I think that was Frank that asked that question. Does that answer your question, Frank?
Yes.
Excellent. Very good. Now, Lee had a question about tokens. What is a token? So if I go over into Tokenizer, so platform.openai.com/tokenizer, and here talks more about tokens in a little bit more detail, as well as demonstrating it. So I'll ask it to show an example, and there it puts in some sample text. Right now, I have the GPT-4o and Mini selected. It shows me that I have 53 tokens split up over 252 characters. And there you see color-coded the text. And you see some words are split up into tokens. Specifically, when it comes to numbers, you'll see that it's looking at 4, 5, 6 as one token, 1, 2, 3 as another. The colon and the space are other tokens. Now, when I select a different model, you'll see that the tokens differ. So every model looks at words differently and breaks them down into tokens differently. Likewise, the same thing with GPT-3 Legacy. So it jumps to 64 tokens for the same text.
I'm sorry, can
Make sense,
can I go
Lee?
back to the,
I think
Yep,
Lee
all
might
good.
still be on mute. All right, very
This
good.
this is Frank
ahead,
again.
Frank.
I'm gonna go back and
Hey,
Oh,
I
we got a
didn't
couple
understand
couple
something.
questions. Oh,
Back to the instructions on the agent versus the action. Did did you really did you really have to have the um, action description also in the agent description for it to work? I don't think I understood the answer to that.
Say that again. Did I need to have the
Yeah,
action
because what's
description?
happened is when you said it didn't save, the reason why it didn't save is that you actually had put the um, action description on the action itself, not on the agent. So basically, if you take a look at your agent demo for today, you have the
Okay,
retrieve, you have that retrieve statement there in the instructions, right? But
correct.
you also have that on the action, don't you?
Not that same one, no. I basically, that action was just giving it a brief description of what it's doing, and it's going to be retrieving a company list from a URI, but I did not specify the URI.
Can you open that up? And
Sure. And then this is what I specified earlier as well before I got to the specific form. You don't believe me, do you, Frank?
too many screens, too late in the
I'm
day.
only kidding. I agree. And actually, I created for myself this little handy dandy document that I was referring to with all the screen captions so that I can flip back and see what I entered and for which area. So it's also a nice, quick way whenever I need a refresher. How did I get to that screen? This is a great way to follow through with it. And I'd be happy to share that with you if you're interested. Yes, Tim, absolutely, would be happy to.
and Sam, we've got two questions in the room.
Please.
JP?
In the jail, put the model instruction so that it doesn't go, and the user gives you an instruction which doesn't follow that. In that case, how you handle the response back, because in the end, the user has to be guided somehow that he should give the right instructions, or the error is given, how you handle that.
Forgive
Did you
me,
hear
the
that?
audio quality is terrible. Can you please repeat that?
Yeah,
So if you put the model into a jail, protect it so that it doesn't receive any odd requests, how you then guide the user back to either give the right instructions or how that is handled, that the feedback to the user in that case, so that the users understand, okay, they made whatever request they made is not going to be satisfied this way, but in certain way, a kind of question on.
Okay, so the question is, if I have the jailbreak set in the safety messages for the model, how do I recover from that when a user enters a invalid prompt, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so the model will essentially bounce back automatically. It knows what to say, and I'll demonstrate that actually. So if we go into our agents, 1104, let's try it in the playground. So as the instructions say, this retrieves a list from the URI here, a list of companies. And I will go ahead and ask it one question that is completely off the wall. How much is a new home? Okay, completely unrelated to what we're working with, right? So basically what it's saying is, I don't have any information on that, but I can provide you if you feed me the right info.
Can you say, give me the list of companies in CSV format?
Do you want me to do it in the instructions or in the user prompt?
Oh, in the prompt right here.
Prompt, okay. Uh, so it went with both, actually. It's still filling it in. So I'll give it a minute to finish.
I think the jailbreak's only going to come back negative if it thinks you're trying to do an actual jailbreak.
Yes.
But the CSV is, if it knows how to do it, it's going to do it.
Well, keep in mind, I didn't specify any jailbreak safety content for this specific model. So at this stage, anything goes essentially. The model was already pre-deployed before we started the presentation. And the reason for that, sometimes it could be a little time consuming. So I had it pre-deployed, but I walked you through the screen captions of the different clicks that we have to go through for that. Make sense? I see mics are still on mute, but at least let me know if that makes sense or if we need to go into more detail.
I think we had one more question. Is that right? Did you have? Here, I'm gonna just bring the microphone over you. I don't have to repeat it.
Hi, I guess this is just a follow-up to the discussion we had on cost model. I was wondering if there are any best practices or controls in Foundry that lets you control the cost of your model's usage when you're designing your agent, so that end user does not abuse your agent and just cost you millions or whatever.
Yes, absolutely. So there's multiple ways of doing that. So number one, in the instructions, I can limit it only to say only 1 or 2 sentences for the reply. In this case, obviously, I'm dumping back a lot of JSON, so that's going to be difficult to interpret, right? I can't fit an elephant into a jar. I mean, it's either I'm bringing back all the JSON or I'm only replying back in 2 sentences. But like in another demo that I'll show you, you specify in the instructions, keep the reply to 2 sentences maximum, for example, or 100 characters. So that's one way. Another way, like I said, so that is how you're controlling the output of the model. Now, for controlling the input, like I said, when you deploy your model, you're going to be utilizing code like this and making a call to this endpoint. And so you don't want to expose this playground to the end user, because naturally it can also modify things as well. Instead, you'd want to give them a text box either through the web or through a desktop application, limit the number of input that they have going in, and then you can take that input and then send it over into the model. And a good practice would be to scrub that input as well, right? Just like the old adage from way back when, never trust user input. It's the same thing. So you limit it that way. Another best practice that I also advise all clients is that in the Azure portal, you need to set alerts. Reason being, and actually you need to set 2 alerts. One, I always advise 25% and then 75% or higher when you reach your estimated cost. And the reason for that is, let's say that I deploy this and I forget to limit the number of output tokens or the number of output sentences. And user just getting very happy and typing away and getting interaction with the model, and that is skyrocketing the cost. I want to make sure that I hit that 25% of my allotment for the month that I hit it after the first week. But if I hit it within the first day, then I know something is wrong, right? If something goes wrong, I need to find out about it early and not late. And it's the same thing as I approach towards the end of the month. I want to make sure that I hit that 75% mark on the third week or later. And so again, this will prevent me if I overlook that 25%, or if usage shoots up between the first week and the third week, I want to know about it. Make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay. And by the way, folks, feel free to stay off of mute as long as there's no background noise. This way it helps to reduce the latency between the questions and the answers. So that aside, what other questions do we have?
Back to the same question. In this case, the answer was not really helping the users how to ask the right question. Is there a mechanism where you can define it?
Yeah, is there a mechanism to define how to give better interactions back to the user if they're not getting what they want, basically? Or does that you have to do all of that through the instructions?
So you would do that through the instructions and modifying it, but then in addition, keep in mind, I just put together a quick demo. I really didn't do a lot of thorough testing, which is something that you would need to do when deploying a model. And let's get away from this URI HTTP call. Let's go to another demo and we can better explain that. So let's go back into our playground, agents, and we'll do the attire suggesting playground. Now, I am not a fashion diva by any means. I don't know why I just created this demo just off the top of my head, but basically the whole point is the instructions as stated here. You are an agent that tells me what the forecasted weather is for tomorrow in Cleveland, Ohio at 8 a.m. You will provide me recommendations on what type of clothes to wear based on that forecast. Only respond to grounded content from the knowledge base. Do not respond with items not found in the knowledge base. Responses should be 2 sentences maximum. So the first question is, what is a knowledge base? So we see that I have multiple tabs and text boxes over here. You saw that actions is basically the ability to make a call or carry some sort of action using the tools that are provided here. And so for this one, what I'm using is the MSN Weather Logic app. And basically, I am passing in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm saying for the weather tomorrow at 8 a.m. So this is going to tell me what the weather is going to be like, as well as suggest what type of attire to wear. So not because I am a fashionista by any means, but let's say that I have a construction crew that I'm deploying out in Cleveland tomorrow. I need to let them know what type of clothes to wear, whether it's going to be hot day, cold, snowy, etc. And so in the knowledge base, so this knowledge base is basically just that. You're giving it a set of documents or data or knowledge in a nutshell that it's going to read from and be able to make suggestions from there. So that could be a variety of different sources: AI search, Fabric, Bing, SharePoint, et cetera, but then we see one here that's grayed out, files. And that's because I already uploaded a file here that has various clothing items that are listed. And so given the set of instructions, I will tell it run. And then it responds back with 2 sentences telling me that tomorrow is going to be mostly sunny, temperature mid-50s. It's best to wear a light jacket or sweater to stay comfortable. Okay, so I limited the output here, and I'm also utilizing another tool where basically it's making a call to the weather service, and I'm passing it in Cleveland, Ohio at specifically 8 a.m. So I'm looking for the morning, and it's going to be retrieving it from a flat text file that has the clothing items that are listed in it. Now, one thing I also wanted to point out, you'll notice that throughout the entire conversation we've been having so far, everything that I've entered has been natural spoken English. You didn't see any semicolons, you didn't see any parentheses. There isn't that rigid format that we're used to as developers in the C# world or Python world, where I had to put everything exactly where it belonged, otherwise things would be catastrophic. As a matter of fact, in the previous example, I don't have it open anymore, but in the previous example, I deliberately left a misspelling in there and it understood it. I misspelled the word and it understood it and it got through it and was able to have a dialogue with a model back and forth. So the question about limiting the output, there is a perfect example. And notice that when I wanted to execute it, run was just a quick way for me to get it to execute. But I can also ask it things like, what should I wear tomorrow? And it will respond back in a very similar answer. Now, let me ask it something off the wall. How much is a new house?
Yeah.
Again, sorry, Lee, let me just finish this one part. What I wanted to emphasize here is that this is the same model, the GPT-4o Mini that we used in the previous demo. It is not set for anti-jailbreaking. And so it responded back with, I don't see any information on new house data. Now, what I could do is, obviously, as I'm developing this in the playground and I'm doing a lot of test scenarios, I need to be able to see what's valid and what's not, how well the model is reacting. So one thing I could do is I can go into my thread logs and see that for all the various executions, like for the first thread, it ran, it made a call to the MSN weather service in the Logic app, and then it responded back. Now, if I go into this second run, you'll see that we have 5 out of 5. But then this last one, where I asked it a pretty bizarre question that it had no idea what it was, it gave me a 1 out of 5 for the intent resolution, and then 3 out of 5 for the task adherence. How well did the model stick to the task at hand? So the evaluations are essentially another set of algorithms or models built into the Foundry that helps me to evaluate how well my model is responding to the instructions given and the execution of the tools. Sorry, I cut you off, Lee. You had a question.
Yeah. 1 second. I'm gonna run over to Greg here.
So basically, you limited the agent to only pick clothing from the knowledge base. So if the knowledge base says you only have socks, for example, would it still say, oh, just wear socks, or would it say, oh, wear a light jacket?
So actually, that's a good question. I'd have to check that. I would assume it would just say light socks, but I'm sorry, it would just say socks. But that's where the testing would come in to ensure that I do get that right answer. Have a question from Kevin. One way to control cost is to utilize provision throughput units. Absolutely. This is more of a cost constraining feature for large enterprises, but if you have heavy utilization, it helps constrain costs. Correct. Calculating PTU is complicated, but there are instructions in the pricing calculator. Not only calculating PTUs, but also looking at previous cost, it tends to fluctuate a bit, and that can also get a little complicated. But PTUs are basically, as the name suggests, provisioned throughput units. So you're essentially buying it in advance. And so but you need to know what your usage is going to be before you actually make that purchase. But yes, very good point, Kevin. Thank you. Lee, there was a question that I had just answered. Did I answer their question correctly, or do they need more detail?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Yes, enter.
Please.
How do you manage user like quality? Like how can people rate the quality of the response of the agent? And then using that response, how do you build a better model?
So as far as the users interacting with it, there really isn't much. You can monitor through the thread logs that I've shown here, where you can see the like for each run as it executes and as the tools are being called, you can look at the evaluations and see how it did with the intent of the user, as well as how well the model stuck to the task at hand. So this information is being collected on the back end and you can evaluate it later. But as far as the user giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's something that you'd have to build into the interface that's going to be your go-between between the user and what we'll be calling this agent code here. Make sense?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? This is great, by the way. I love the give and take and having the interaction.
Yeah, the beauty of not just doing a YouTube video. I think we're good here.
Right, exactly. Question for you. What's our time slot?
We're going to get kicked out of this room at 8:30. So yeah, we've got another 45 minutes till we absolutely have to leave.
Okay, very good. All right. So if there are no more questions, so I showed you the second one. We talked about the agents. Now there's also voice capabilities and where I can actually interact with my model. But again, that also comes with a cost. So I can ask it a question here. Microphone is in use. What should I wear for tomorrow?
Did it talk to you? Because we couldn't hear it if it did.
Did the audio come through?
No. Was it
Oh.
talking?
It was, yes. And it's still picking up the mic right now. So let me just go ahead and end that. But the advantage of utilizing voice mode is if you have someone, a user who's visually impaired, obviously not 100%, but if they have a hard time seeing, you can allow voice mode to be able to capture voice and likewise be able to respond back to the user all verbally.
And most users talk better than they type anyways. Good interface.
Yes and no. Let's just say
regular
that.
users, not developers.
Yes, of course. So you'll notice also here as I'm going through, my token usage is jumping from 2588. Well, this one is 1835. It's different, but obviously all these tokens are adding up as I am continuing on with the dialogue with my model. All right, let's get back into our slide deck. So we talked about the various ways of building an agent, and that was in the Foundry. But another way of doing it is through computer use agents. Now, this is a way of capturing mouse and keyboard actions, where essentially I would have my everything set in a VM, and then the model would capture my keystrokes and my clicks, and I can translate that into executable commands within the environment. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a demo for this. However, thank you to Marco Castellina, and he'll give us a short video on that.
And we cannot hear it. Maybe stop sharing and reshare with the audio.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. So let's do this. Stop sharing. Go ahead and share again, include audio.
Hello, I'm Marco Castellana, VP Products of Core AI and AI Futurist at Microsoft. Today, we're going to look at two groundbreaking innovations in Azure AI Foundry that are set to revolutionize how we think about AI agents. You'll see firsthand the incredible capabilities of the Computer Use Agent, or CUA, model from Azure OpenAI Service, which is an advanced AI model that can literally use your computer to execute tasks autonomously. Alongside the CUA, we also have the Responses API, a unified API that consolidates the retrieval, reasoning, and execution processes into a single call, making it simpler and more efficient to develop AI applications that interact with various tools. Without further ado, let's dive into the demo and witness these capabilities in action. I'm using the Responses API with the Computer Use Agent in Azure OpenAI Service. I've connected it to a Linux virtual machine, which is running on my desktop, and I've asked it to do some grunt work for me. You see, every day I have to go to this site and download this PDF for a shipment, and then I have to go to another site to enter a bill of lading into it. It's going to filter it down because I told it to do it only for the last day. It sees this shipment. Now it needs to download that document. Let's see if it can figure this one out. All right, it's got the PDF. Now it's got to read the PDF, and this PDF goes off the bottom of the page, so it's going to have to scroll. Now, does it remember everything it needs to enter? It has remembered everything that it read on that PDF. It's successful, and now it's asking me for some input. This is the human in the loop part. I think we're good to go, so I say submit it. As you can see, these tools offer some amazing possibilities for automating workflows and enhancing productivity across various industries. Azure AI Foundry continues to push the boundaries of what's possible with AI-driven automation, and we're excited to see how you'll innovate with these powerful tools. For more information, visit aka.ms/CUA_responses API. Thank you for watching.
So personally, I thought that was pretty impressive. Where now it can actually carry out actions just like a human. It can download, fill in the forms, all on a person's computer. Essentially, it's mimicking another human being. Now, let me ask you, you've seen the various ways of building agents and what it can do. What is the benefit of it? What do you think is the takeaway from it? Where can this serve in business? Automation is one answer. Thank you, Tim.
I was gonna say, can we use that for QA? Right in that?
Yeah, can you use that for UI automation for QA?
Absolutely. Automated repetitive tasks, correct. Triage. Keep in mind now the triage, if we're talking about bugs, not necessarily a lot of at risk there, right? But if we're triaging cases that are coming into the emergency room, we might want to incorporate the human in the loop type of methodology where someone is signing off on what the model is recommending, because there's a lot at risk, obviously, when we have human life there. One way I like to describe agents. Sorry, go ahead, Lee.
It's got to help me fill in my timesheet, right?
I dread timesheets and expense reports like you wouldn't believe. Yes, that would definitely be a big plus. But at another presentation that I was delivering, someone asked me, what is an agent? Where's the benefit? I essentially described it in 2 words: free labor, right? You can train it on what to do on a variety of different tasks. I mean, the majority of our tasks is sitting at a computer and doing things, right? You can train it on doing some of these things, and essentially you have free labor to implement in your organization and run it 24/7. So should be a big plus for businesses.
Yeah, we got a
Uh,
question in the room and one
please.
online. Oh, hang on a second. I'm gonna go ahead and bring this over so you can,
PUA is a one-time cost, no tokens involved?
CUA.
Yeah.
So CUA, you still set it up on, set up the model on the Foundry, and then you can utilize it with the agent on your local machine. So there's still going to be token cost going back, even though that you're executing it on your machine, but because it's using the model on the back end, there is token cost there.
Good.
Sorry to disappoint you.
but it's no additional cost to what would be the Foundry. Okay. Right. So, okay, Stephen?
Yeah, my question is, when you had that browser up and you had the CUA going, that was on your user's computer typing into their browser?
Correct.
Okay. Are there any rules on that?
As far as
Limiting what it can type into a browser?
well, essentially, as far as the typing into the browser, it's reading from one document, typing it into another. I'm sorry, reading from a document, typing it into a browser, into a form. So it's not really a lot of room for creativity. It's just going from point A to point B.
Okay, like filling in a template in the browser.
Right. Now, keep in mind, again, with the safety messages, and let me jump to that if I may. Okay, so we'll go to models and endpoints, and
Did it pop the browser up and then fill it in?
I don't recall that portion, but I'm sure whether it did or did not in the video, you can certainly train it to do open a browser.
Okay. That answers my question.
Okay. Okay, so this is one way of creating guardrails and controls for the model. But then also when I'm deploying a model, if I can go over into, I think it's in the chat playground. Yes. So here we see the model that I have deployed. I can add in a section for safety system messages. And then I can select to avoid harmful content, avoid ungrounded content, meaning content that it has not been trained on, avoid copyright infringements. For example, if I want to take excerpts from, a book, for example, or a song, then it will prevent that. And of course, jailbreaks and manipulations where a user is trying to manipulate it to go against the instructions that it was given originally. Again, sorry to disappoint you, but you'll notice that each one has a token cost associated with it because every time the user submits a message, one of those safety messages goes along with it to the model. So there's a cost there as well. So let me pause here. We have 2 questions in the room. Please go ahead.
All right. Get you first, Stephen.
So Sam, I was just curious, back to the QA question I had earlier. Are you able to trigger these computer use agents from, say, a pipeline in Azure DevOps or something along those lines?
Yeah, so there are several ways to trigger it. So you can utilize code because essentially that agent is accessible through a URI endpoint. So I can make a call to there, trigger it, depending on the user action, depending on what happens, for example, in a data set, that can also trigger the agent.
All right.
Do
Cliff?
you also use Microsoft Automate to do that orchestration?
So orchestration is something else that we'll talk about later, but certainly you could do that. And what orchestration means is that basically one agent calls another, and there are multiple ways that that can be done. It could be in a round robin fashion where, and again, we'll talk about that in another slide. I create something and then I check to see the quality of it. If I'm satisfied, I'm done. If not, recreate it and it's cyclical. Or I can have it where I call multiple agents in parallel, or in a daisy chain fashion, depending on the actions, whether they succeed or fail, I would call them in a specific flow. So all the orchestration can be done separately, and I can utilize a variety of different ways as well. I can utilize one agent to orchestrate the flow from one agent to the others. Think of it as a supervisory agent where it's calling all the other subordinate agents depending on the execution and whether they succeed or fail. Or I can use MCP to be able to implement that.
Cool, thanks. And sorry for interrupting there. I interrupted somebody in the room.
No problem at all. Go ahead.
How do I analyze which model is best for my use case?
So it depends. And so let's go over into the, we'll leave this open. We'll jump through to the model catalog. So first of all, it depends on what you're doing. And I always advise clients before you get into an AI project, have a clear objective statement. What is it that you're looking to accomplish? I actually I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was telling me the executive staff came to him and they said, just do something in AI that'll make us money. I'm like, that's not exactly a clear objective, right? We all want to make more money, but you need to have a clear objective as to what you're doing. Meaning, do you need to do audio analysis? Do you need to do chat completion? Do you need to do a conversational AI, document translation? All these are inference tasks that you need to select. Do you need to have your model fine-tuned? Because when you fine-tune a model, you're essentially training it on a specific set of data. For example, if I want to train it on all things Lee Richardson, I would need to find out his hobbies, his work history, get into all the details of his life, put that in a document, and then train the model on it and fine tune it for everything about Lee Richardson. Do I need to do that or not? Number one. And number two, and then there's another thing is I need to look at licensing. Does it matter where the model comes from, which collection? And as you see, we have multiple different curators for the models that are available. And if I select see all models, you'll see that I have 11,000 plus models, and the list continues to grow. About a year ago, this was a tenth of what's there right now. So it is growing by leaps and bounds. There are many models that have surfaced since then, GPT-4, GPT-5, DeepSeek is another big one. And actually the list, like I said, continues to grow above 11,000. Now, on top of that, sorry, go ahead.
Suppose we have gone through the drop down, we come back with 5 models. How do I analyze which is best?
I'm sorry, the audio is very muffled. One more.
So yeah, it said the question is if you've gone through those drop downs and kind of narrowed it down, and there's still 5 choices, how do you decide between those 5?
Okay, good question. So in my case, I have 4 models that I have selected. I'll select the compare models, and these are the 4 models that I have here. You can also drill down and look at the quality that you have as far as the index or accuracy, the cost, latency, and safety. And then in addition, it can also show you the data set that it was trained on and how it got those metrics. So you would want a data set that closely resembles what you were going to be working with. Let me see.
Probably just least expensive.
Is that
Probably just least expensive.
But again, with there's advantage to the more costlier models, right? Obviously, they're going to be better trained, but again, it just depends on your own situation. And there is an area where it shows you the data set. Yeah, here we go. The training data that was used for that. So it takes a little bit more of digging. And keep in mind, the focus a lot of times is on LLMs, but SLMs are gaining a lot of notoriety and they're doing very well in performance in comparison. So you have smaller size, less cost, and it could be doing the same task that you're looking for as a large language model. So don't overlook small language models. Also, one little side note, a pro and a con to using the AI Foundry. The pro is that there's no software to install, it's on a web portal. The downside is there's no software to install, it's on a web portal. And the downside is because it's a web portal, things change. And even though the content is still there, but the number of clicks and where things are located tends to change from time to time. That's why I was kind of struggling with finding where the data used for the training was located. In addition, if I go back here, sometimes depending on which of these menu options are pinned versus unpinned, I may lose track of where they're at and kind of be difficult to find. So just a little caveat. But back to your question, I believe that was Stephen that was asking that about the model cost. Does that answer your question?
There might be two Stevens in here.
Okay. The gentleman that asked about which model to choose, did that better answer your question, sir?
Oh, that was Cliff.
Okay. Cliff?
The only thing I would wonder about it is, do any of these models offer a warranty?
Not that I know of.
Accuracy originally, what do I do? Can I come back and ask for a refund?
Sorry, the audio is terrible. All I heard was accuracy.
That was good. It was a joke. It was good.
Okay. Fair enough. Very good. Stephen, do you have a question?
So we're doing URL calls. Is the data back and forth, can that be encrypted?
I don't know. I'd have to try that. And how are you encrypting it currently?
From the data that's sent to me or the data that I'm asking, I'm doing a get, correct?
Correct.
In what I send and what I receive back, can I encrypt that so when I go over the web that nobody can read my traffic?
So can you encrypt it using one of the popular hashing algorithms? I don't know. I'd have to try that, quite honestly. I think you can. Another way to do it is through over a VPN. And that would also help with the safety aspect of it. But to answer your question, I am 90% sure you can do it, but I am not 100%.
Okay, that answers it.
I would have to try
We've
it.
got two questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Must be using a REST API, which is already going over HTTPS or
It's
something.
going over TLS.
So TLS, so it should be encrypted point to point. I don't think there is anything special you need. Yeah.
Sure. And did you have a question? You have a separate?
It sounds right.
Yeah.
I would hate to give you a misleading answer, so let me look into it further and feel free to reach out to me afterwards. I'll make my contact information available and we can definitely take this a little bit further and take it offline.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I just didn't know if there was some place where like you enter an encryption key or something like that. And I think you've answered it for what I need.
Okay.
Yeah, the gentleman here said you could probably put it on a VNet too.
For sure. I would definitely take that as an additional precaution.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. Going back to the CUAs that we were talking about, how does that actually implemented? Does a user who's going to use one of those actually install some piece of software on their computer, or is it connecting to that computer through some kind of RDP or something like that, remote desktop protocol?
No, not necessarily a remote desktop, but essentially you're going to be making a callback to the model that's in the Foundry. Again, agents are built on top of a large language model. So you're going to be making a callback to the Foundry to be able to utilize that agent locally on your machine.
And so
Make sense?
what's installed then what's installed on the machine if I'm giving that out to other users to be able to do that? Does it create some kind of software that's connect, or is it just a connection to a website and you log into the website and then that allows you to connect, that allows that agent in effect to connect with that user's laptop and do whatever it needs to, like launch a browser on that, or open a file or something along those lines?
Yeah, like the scrolling that he showed in the demo, someone had to be doing the scroll. I mean, something had to be doing the scrolling, right? Either an app or an RDP session.
Correct. So truthfully, I didn't get a chance to experiment with it, but like Lee said, I would imagine something would have to be installed locally in order to be making the call to the agent and then executing it locally.
Well, like Chrome, I know has some features that have been added that allows that kind of interaction that will respond. So there must be some API, I guess, for that, for something that's installed locally, or maybe it's just through the RDP or whatever the
So keep
equivalent
it-
is to get to it.
Browser plugin.
Yeah,
So
Chrome has that.
So a plugin is still something that you'd install locally, even though it's all within the confines of the browser, but it's still something that's installed locally. So specifically to answer your question, like I said, I didn't get a chance to experiment with it, but I would imagine that would be the case, is that we have something that's installed locally, whether it's a browser plugin or a small app, um, and be able to communicate with the Foundry.
Great, thanks.
Let me make a note of these questions because these are really good, by the way. All right, so we got the hashing data, and then the CUA.
If I had to take a wild guess, take a look at Microsoft RPA. They probably just stuck the agent on top of Microsoft RPA. That would be just a wild guess.
Yeah, I can
As
neither
far as
deny nor
getting the
confirm that.
answers,
Go ahead.
if you do happen to get the answers, Sam, a great way to share them back is to post them as comments in the meetup, and that should go out to everybody that's here.
Absolutely. What I do is I create a blog post around it, and then I'll post a link to that.
Nice.
I believe that CUA is built into Windows 11. I'm not sure about that because it's still in preview. But I certainly see it coming in future editions. Yeah, the future of CUA. Yep. Okay. Thank you for posting that, Kevin. All right. What other questions can I answer for you?
I think we're kind of winding down here in the room for questions.
Apparently. Are you guys tiring out on me? All right. Very good. So we'll continue on, and I will wrap it up. I know we need to be out of there by 8:30. And let's get back into our slide deck.
Hello.
So agent orchestration, as I had mentioned, comes in different varieties, and basically it all depends on the flow and what needs to happen. The one thing I would caution you on is do not execute things in parallel unless that they are unrelated. And I'll give you a perfect example of a problem that I had recently. I logged on to my credit card website, asked them to stop the automatic payments. I was going to pay it manually. I received the confirmation, stop payments have been confirmed. And yet the next day I see an attempt to withdraw the funds over again. When I asked, they said, well, that email just goes out, but you're supposed to actually have the stop payment done earlier. So the point is, you want to be able to move on to the next step only when that current step has been completely satisfied and will not impact the following step, specifically from a user perspective. You don't want to be talking out from both sides of your mouth to the end user. When you say something is confirmed, it's done. They can move on to the next step. So be able to do exception handling, error checking, and ensure that step A is done before moving on to step B. As I mentioned, there's a variety of different ways to go about it. Some are bidirectional, as we see in the hierarchical, even though it's a hierarchy, but the called agents refer back to the calling agents and reply back. And then you have some that are essentially a handoff, where it's basically one direction, and there is no bidirectional there. You have the maker checker format or pattern, where essentially I have a worker and a reviewer, and I review what the worker has done and either rework it or approve it. Model deployments. So we had glanced over the deployment for the model, but again, there are multiple different deployment types that are available, and this is posted on my blog. And as you see, there are advantages and disadvantages to each one that you choose. Cost is, of course, a driving factor, but of course, latency and throughput is also another driving factor. It all depends on your own situation. Also, since many of you probably work in the government sector, I wanted to point this out regarding compliance, that with agents, they are approved in multiple different areas for compliance, with exception of SOC and FedRAMP. However, as Microsoft had stated, those are coming soon. Lastly, two things that I'd like you to remember. Changes are automatically saved whenever we change focus, meaning as you had seen when I was configuring my agent, as I went from one text box to the other, basically once I lost focus for that one text box, changes were automatically saved for me. Lastly, everything connects to Azure. So when we go back into our web portal, we see, or in our Foundry, let's go to the agent project. And we see that I have the agent endpoint here, agent project 2025-0915. And it ties back to resource group RG Sam Nasser 1001. When I go back into the Azure portal, we see that that resource group has everything that I had configured for those agents and that project. So I have my get weather, my external HTTP call, my weather appropriate attire agent, which is a logic app. So everything is stored within this resource group within Azure, tied to my subscription. And so with that, typically I always like to ask, what is it that we've learned here today? But I know that we're a little tight on time. So I will tell you the takeaways that I would like for you to have from here is that everything is configurable within the agent. It's all done through natural language, meaning there is no Python format or C# format. And essentially, everything is done in the Foundry, and I'm able to actually access that through some code as a UI endpoint, a URI endpoint that I can access. Bottom line, create an agent, configure it, test it, and in the end, you have free labor, 24/7, and it continues to run, can do a variety of different things, as we had seen. If you found this interesting and you care to have this as a class for your organization or a lunch and learn, either virtual or in person, feel free to reach out to NIS Technologies. I'm one of the trainers, and I'd be happy to help you with that. In addition, you can find all my contact information on Linktree, and more specifically, my email, snasser@nistechnologies.com. You can also find all my socials on Linktree, as I mentioned, and my favorite platform, LinkedIn. Let's connect with that if we're not already connected. And so with that, thank you all for attending. It's been a pleasure presenting to you. The questions were great. The dialogue was great. And I will follow up on those questions and post it on the Meetup site. And please, just because the meeting is ending here doesn't mean the dialogue stops. You have my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me if you need help getting an agent started or tested. If you run into any questions, let's have a dialogue online. I'm always checking my email and whatnot and LinkedIn messages. So I'd be more than happy to connect with you offline. So once again, thank you for attending. If there's any last minute questions, would love to take them. Tim, thank you for the comment. Appreciate it. So any questions, anyone?
Learned a ton, and we need a little bit of time to clear out of the room. So thank you so much for presenting tonight. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to having you back to close us out next year.
Would be happy to.
All right. Fantastic. All right. Thanks again. Take care.
All right.
Good night.
Thank you all. Have a good night.